the Ukrainian context at this moment. Of course, all around the world, all cities and all urban planners and urban designers have to think about it. But I think in a country like Ukraine, it's even more urgent because if it's not for the people, then for what do we do it at this moment? We have 3 slightly different weeks, of course. The third week, there will be Roscrit member Tommy Miken, and he is a Finnish architect and urban planner who works in Finland, but mainly in Switzerland. He is sharing a few thoughts about a few projects also, where he very much had the human-centric design approach included. The social values in the design will be shown. So that is very much also a design lecture that we will have then. But of course, he uses his the same values and the same processes as we also will see today. Next week, there will be Anya Bondar. She's an architect in Kiev, and she is also a member of parliament. And she will tell a little bit about governance and the issues on legislation and decentralization. And I will give a lecture next week about the theory of participation and some, let's say, examples, pilot projects that I have been doing in the Netherlands, but also in Ukraine. So some projects to share. And this week we have Tess Broekmans. It's a friend and a colleague of mine. We worked together in a couple of projects, but she's also a professor in the university in Delft, and she is one of the partners in Urhan Urban Design Office in Amsterdam. One of the offices, I think, in the Netherlands or in Western Europe that has the value of the people most in its core of the studio. One more thing before we give the floor to Tess. I think next week there will be also a 20-minute talk by Margot. Shall I tell this, Lilette, or do you want to? I see you want to do something, but you don't. I will tell it. Okay. Margot Didichenka, who is our head of the capacity building in Roscrit, she will tell a little bit more about Nijin. So we have shared a lot of information about this municipality in the beginning. And I think from next week onwards, and maybe also a little bit today, we will guide you also towards the end of this whole process, so the middle of December, when we're finalizing this whole capacity building program. For this, we need to understand better and share with you better what are the expectations to deliver in December, individually and maybe in group work. We will also do that today in the separate groups after the lecture. But also we will share more information that we know from the municipality of Nijin to be able to step into more detail if you want to, if you think it's relevant for your approach in your group. So that is also next week. So next week there will be 3 shorter intro lectures and not one big one. I think that's all to say for now. Hopefully the next few minutes, some more people will drop in. Like I said, there's a lot of electricity cuts at this moment, so it might be complicated. If you have the opportunity, Tess will definitely like it if you put on your camera. If not, we understand as well. But yeah, please do. Floor is yours, Tess.
Yeah, thank you. And please interrupt me and fill me in, because I have never been to Ukraine, so I feel a bit reluctant telling you about my Dutch practice, because I have so little experience with what you are coping with and what you are the way you are working. So it feels a bit awkward, you could say, that I'm sharing
I know, and
something.
we discussed before that I strongly believe that your story is relevant for all the people here. So trust me on that. And if I think that I
Yeah,
have to make some kind of link to the Ukrainian reality, I will try to do that as good as possible. And then I
yeah,
will indeed interrupt you.
yes, please. So feel free, and also for others, if you think, what is this about, or oh, how does it relate to me? Please, please let me know.
Yeah. We also, for
So,
Tess, we also usually say questions in the chat. So that is what very often happens in parallel in Ukrainian
okay,
or in English. So we will take a look at that. So Lilette and Lisa and me and Tatjana, we will all look at the chat as well. So don't bother about that. If we feel that something should be said in between, we will also
yeah,
interrupt. You just go with the flow as you like it.
okay, perfect. So I called my lecture "In Search of Lightness in Urban Design" because I'm working a lot in in existing cities in transformation. So not very often a clean slate, but always an existing city, an existing network of people, people who live there that you are working with, and that's also what I like a lot because I think it's much more interesting to work on building cities, making cities together with everybody who is living there and who is taking care of the city. So it's really for me something that is a joint effort, you could say. For me, I when I start a project, I always start with thinking, oh, what is necessary here? Why are we thinking about this area? Why do we need to change anything? And of course, there are very many large transitions going on. You have your specific problems in Ukraine, of course, but worldwide climate change. Thinking about equality, thinking about how do we create attractive neighborhoods. So I think there is some sort of common knowledge what we want to achieve together when we are making cities, that we make places that are open to all, that are public, that create liveliness, that are created with many voices at the table. So that's where the thinking starts, and maybe you could see it as three scales or three elements together. So on the one hand side, the good life for all is something very small. It's like this picture sitting in the park and reading a book and meeting other people and getting to know each other on a very basic way. Good society is about how do we live together, how do we make sure that everybody is heard, that we are also well organized as a society. And then, of course, the largest scale of the healthy planet is something we have to deal with every day to make sure that we are friendly for the planet and that we can make the planet more healthy. Also, again, I think it's a circle for us as people to live healthy and to find the combination of healthy planet and good life for all. So these goals, even though they might be quite abstract and more specific on specific sites, I think it's what guides us in urban design. But the big question I'm struggling with every day is more about the how. So how do we achieve this? How can we make this happen? How can we make sure that we can do this in a proper way? So for me, the why is the bigger drive, you could say, where to start from. And then it, what is the actual result? The what is also something which follows from the way we are working. So the how is more steering, you could say, than the what. So I would like to speak to you about how do we work on cities? How do we work on transitions? And I think there's a key element is that three elements of basics for transformations, you could say, is what we are doing differently maybe than the years before. This image on the right it's an image from the 60s, where when we were planning, there was a sort of logic that if we make sure that we have enough space for amount of people, and that we know exactly what people need and what people want. And I think that's no longer the case, that everything is changing much faster, so we cannot predict what is the direct need for people, the direct need in public space, but also in buildings. So there is a need for a bit of flexibility and a bit of lightness. But we start from what is already there. So I think there are three basic principles built on what is already there. This is the Amsterdam Canal Belt, which is of course a classic image of yeah, a main structure which functions very well as a basis for transformation, where the water and the quays were there before the buildings, and they provide a structure for reuse, because you can easily recognize again the structure and the buildings, but through time, many of these buildings have changed. So you can see, for example, on the left-hand side, this bigger building, which is built a century ago, was not there on the original image. So this structure allows for a lot of change and allows for a lot of transformation. But it's also heritage, it's also identity. So it's something that everybody knows that should be kept and that creates a basic quality, you could say. And that's not always the case. So I think also if, and this is an 80s example, also in Amsterdam, in a completely different neighborhood, in a deprived neighborhood, even there, building on what is already there is a very strong quality, because it's not only more sustainable because you use the materials that are already there, but you also use the networks that are already there. The people can relate to the place because they remember what it was like. So it is also about, yeah, recognizable spaces. And in this specific case, there was quite a nice add-on, not only with the paint, but also in a functional sense with, yeah, here it says kans en kunst, so opportunity and art. So how can we add different functions in this neighborhood, which gives new life to the neighborhood, not only to housing, but also to yeah, self-development, to culture, to work. So I think that's often where we start, is looking closely at as what is already there, because every neighborhood has something that is worthwhile that you can build on. And what is maybe important to know then is that, of course, changes in the city do not change at the same speed. So the structure of the public space is a very slow changing element. If you think of, for example, the New York, the Broadway, which was already there before the city was there, and still is a main structure in the city. So the position of streets is something which goes really a long way, and that also has to do with, yeah, of course, with the structure of the street, but also with what is underneath. So the networks that are there. So the position is something which is very strong, and also when cities have been demolished or war struck, I think that's something that goes a long way. So the structure forms the basis, you could say. But then the next level, the design of the public space, is something which can change a lot, which is also quite light, you could say, because a road can be mainly for cars, but can also change to a public space which is more for meeting, which is greener, which is more for pedestrians. So the way we use that space and the way we design that public space has another flux, is much easier to change. And then when you look at the buildings, of course, the buildings have a more stable flux, but even there, the use and the functionality of the buildings is something that changes a lot faster. And what makes it difficult is that these speeds are not aligned. So in this scheme, it seems like, okay, there are sort of perfect moments where everything is happening at the same time, and you can find the right moments to do everything together. But that is hardly ever the case. So, for example, in the Netherlands, the sewerage system is made for 50 years. So in 50 years' time, you need to change the subterranean sewerage. But so we are very much always thinking like, how can we add things to what we are already changing? So if we have the opportunity to change something, for example, this sewerage system, what other uses can we add on to that? Can we make sure that there are other things that can profit from the fact that we have to open up the street And then we're not going to redesign the public space exactly the way it was, but see how can we add on to that. So using the right moment in time to combine elements. I think that's the key of this scheme, you could say. Maybe already something to add on, Fulco, or is it clear enough as it is? Yeah? Okay, on we go. Then the second theme, I called it multiple voices. I think especially, I'm not sure how that accounts for you, but here in the Netherlands, people who are working in planning, who are working in architecture or in politics, are quite alike, you could say. We have a sort of way of looking at the city and thinking about it that is quite similar, but we are just a very small part of the people who are actually using and this city. So we should be aware that we have a limited view, you could say. So there are a lot of other views on how a city is used. This is an example quite old from the 60s from Ingrid Gale, who has been mapping how people use the street and what are nice spots to linger. And then checking how space is used, I think is a very interesting way of finding out how people need what they need in public space, what they need also in building space. But it's also something we need to ask people. So listening well to other people, people that have a different life than you, that use the space differently from you, is important to hear them and to include them in the design process, because I cannot think the way they think. In the Netherlands, this book from a guy called Tim Schongers was an important thing, because he said you don't know what it feels like to be poor and to have to live in poverty if you have money, because you don't know what the effect of it is. So you have to ask people who actually lived in poverty to see what the effects are and how it affects your daily life and how it affects the way you use public space, the way you use buildings. We cannot imagine it. We need to ask people. We need to have these people also at the table as designers, as co-designers, to make sure that we are knowing the way the city is used and the needs of different groups. And an interesting example, I think, here is a neighborhood in Rotterdam, which is a really very mixed, culturally mixed neighborhood called Bospolder Tussendijken. Here the people from the local municipality, together with people from the neighborhood, started to thinking about the energy transition. How can we make a more sustainable energy system, which is a very complex and long-term project. But they started actually with mapping out the networks, the social networks in the neighborhood. So to discover who is living here, where do they gather, what are the elements that create social cohesion, and how do they relate to each other? Because understanding how this network works of all these different people is a very strong element of the neighborhood. And understanding how people depend on each other and depend on certain facilities in the neighborhood. I think if we understand that, we also understand that if we start changing these neighborhoods, we also start demolishing these kind of networks. So it's important to understand these links. And of course, it's also ever changing. So you can map it once, but it's not a fixed situation. But it's something that really helps us to understand how a neighborhood or how a city is used. And they did this during Corona, because then it was more difficult to use the public space to find out what is going wrong in this specific time when people are locked in their houses, which connections are lost in that specific period. And they also developed together a way of working, which I don't know completely in depth, so I will not go in it too deeply, but there are some elements in it. So they call it asset-based community development. And it starts with, again, which assets do you have, which can be spatial assets, but could also be social assets. Starting with the people who live there in the lead, and to focus on what's strong. So it's, in my opinion, always easier to make something which is good better than to make something which is not there work. So this starting from what is strong, starting with the elements that create energy, is easier because then people are more willing to put their energy in it. So, and I think also an important notice is that it's a slow process. So patience, not months, but years, which is the text in the bottom. I think that's also an interesting one. They call it the speed of trust. So it also takes time to build trust, to build these networks, to trust each other, to make sure you want to do things together. So and then this a bit go with the flow, follow what has energy. One thing leads to another. This kind of way, it's not the way we plan normally. Normally, we make a planning and we say, okay, this is the goal, and you have to reach it in this time, and we need this, and but it never occurs the way we plan it. So being more sensitive to what is actually happening and how you can respond to that, I think is an interesting take on planning projects.
It was difficult. I didn't see myself. Can you please keep it? I didn't see the fact that this slide was in Dutch. I'm sorry that I didn't. I just overlooked it when I checked your
Hmm.
presentation. But I think this topic that you say, which is down there, patience, not months, but years. This is quite difficult in Ukraine at the moment. And I would like maybe to do for the people here to think about, okay, if the speed of building trust in a neighborhood or in a community takes time, how to how that advice could be implemented or used in Ukraine, not for tests to answer, but for together to talk about it maybe at the end. So I think that that sentence is difficult, but also very
Hmm.
interesting to explore later. Um, and what I really like about the flow of the picture is, yeah, go with the flow, follow the energy. So also the picture itself, the diagram itself shows that. So maybe if you don't even understand all the words, then for the Ukrainians, at least the flow of the picture shows something that you might even understand without exactly understanding it. But maybe we can try to find an English version on it as well.
Yeah, so I was also not planning to tell everything which is on the map. So, but you're right. It's nicer if you can read the words. So words like talent and passion, knowledge, curiosity. But it's. You're right. It's more about this. Yeah, using what is already there, making sure that you are finding hooks. That's what it says here. So where can we start? What are points that you can add on to? Yeah, but
Yeah, we
it's
will
good
use
that
that somehow in the projects after the lecture, I think, and in the ideas because it is important. It's interesting. It's an interesting diagram that I would like to translate. I will find a way.
okay, good.
Continue. Yeah.
Yep. So the third one is about the city is never finished. And I think that's especially for planners, we always draw an image and then we say, okay, this is the image that we want to make. This is sort of the final stage. But especially in transformation in cities which are already functioning or half functioning, or it is always step by step. So this is an image of Hamerkwartier in Amsterdam, which is an area which is supposed to be a development area already for a while, but it is slowing down because there is a large industry there that doesn't fit very well with the housing. But in the meantime, a lot is happening there. So this is a brewery who has a cafe, but there is a lot of other type of cafes, and so the dynamics of this in-between phase are actually very interesting, maybe even more interesting than the final development. So this can you use yeah, with the small steps that you can make, you can also make an identity and start building on the quality of an area. And now I have a very complex scheme, which is also in Dutch, but I have the concise version in English. So I will just show you this one for a small moment to show that it was a scheme that we developed, which is about the transition of post-war areas, post-war in this case, post-World War II areas, and to show how how these phases in time were different, and also how they aligned with the politics and the planning that was done at the same time. But maybe it's better to go to the easy version. So what I wanted to say is that this is life cycle of the neighborhood. Um, it's a process that is not linear either. So when you start designing a neighborhood, it takes in the Netherlands quite a while till something is built, and sometimes the situation has already changed. So you're building an old plan, you could say. Then there's the design phase, the building phase, the experiment. This phase is when people start living there. So first generation people living there. Then you have to redo something again. Second generation people coming in. So that's the sort of change that every neighborhood goes through. But of course, it depends on when this neighborhood started. And then when you look at this, so we could say this is more or less what we are in now. Every neighborhood is in a different phase. So some of them are really in the, yeah, well organized people living there, second generation phase. Some are under construction, some are still designed. And what's at least, I'm not sure if that counts also for you, but in the Netherlands, you can see that all these things which are done at the same period, which I call here more or less the sign of the times, is about even though if it is construction or newly built, it is in the logic of that moment. So if you, for example, look at the 70s, 80s, which was a period in the Netherlands where there was a lot of thinking about human scale, thinking about communities, you could see that both in the reconstruction of older areas, but also in the newly built areas. And I think this this sign of the times, of the way we are doing things at a specific moment, influences also quite a lot. So at the moment in the Netherlands, the whole way of thinking is very market driven. And that is also for the reconstruction of older areas. Everything should be feasible. We're much more thinking about how can we make it work rather than how would it work on the long term, what is needed on the long term.
Here, I do a similar intervention as I did in the previous diagram, because sign of the times in Ukraine is extremely important. The fact that we have such a large group here now in this meeting to think about the future planning, to think about the urban recovery, but you are the ones who will design the future time of Ukraine based on, let's say, two or three main historical basements. As when you look at it, if you would make a diagram like this for Ukraine or for your city, of course, Lviv is different than Kharkiv, but for your city, and then you will think about, and what is then now my addition to this? In what time are we living now, or are we going to reconstruct now and rethink the cities? Always looking back, but also trying to think about going forward as much as possible. And what is then your role and your yeah, your position there, your idea there? What, because you are the ones who will do it, and very, very crucial to see that it's not from scratch, based on something from the past, but still you make a big turn and you have so many opportunities. So it's really up to you here, and yeah, that is what I like about this diagram a lot.
Thank you. It's also for me difficult to see what it could mean for you. So I'm very happy with your interventions. Um, and then and it's another theoretical take on, you could say, is that in when you look at transitions in neighborhoods or in cities, um, we have a lot of things stacked on top of each other. So in the bottom half of this scheme, you could say there's a lot of transitions in yeah the water and soil. So the whole fundament of the city. Mobility is something which is, especially in the Netherlands now, really an issue to make sure that we are using less cars, trying to be more phasing on short distances. What can you do by bike? What can you do by walking? But it's really something which takes a lot of time because we have planned our cities on the basis of the car. So the suburbs are really car oriented. The energy system is something which is changing radically. And on the top part of the transition, there's the way we live together is changing and the community is changing. The fact that it's also in the Netherlands, loneliness and individuality is really a problem. But also urban economy and housing are changing. We are facing quite a large housing problem at the moment in the Netherlands. And both these networks and the use are using the same resources. So we have also limited resources that everything should be made of. So I think that's another layer of complexity, you could say. Um, we made a book in 2010, which is called Spontaneous City. And I see, I'm not supposed to be checking the chat, right? That's others
It's
who
okay.
can
It's
add on
okay.
that. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Um, yeah, I'm wondering a bit how much I should tell about it, but I think what we've been trying to do in this book is to see looking differently at planning. Can you hear me? Because there's a bit of background noise. I'm not sure if is that annoying? No?
Go ahead.
Okay,
Go
good.
ahead. No,
Okay.
no problems here.
So the four themes of the manifesto of the spontaneous city was zoom in. So look closely to what is already there. It's actually quite close to the first theme that I called work user oriented to see what is who are there, what are the local needs. So this relates to this multiple voices that I spoke about earlier. The third one, creating collective values, I think is also important because it's what do we share, what do we need together, and what are elements that we want to work on together, which can be very simple public things like this small library that I showed in the first picture, but it can also be really bigger changes, and it can also be elements that you are building on identity together, I think, through collective values. And the last one, organized flexibility, is thinking about how can we do this in a light way, in a simple way that we can also change it if change is needed. So
Well, here this why I think this is important, and if you can share as much from this book as you can digitally to me to the group, that would be amazing, because I know it's a book that I don't even know if it's still for sale, but definitely not translated into Ukrainian or. But it's also in English. There is an English version,
yeah,
so if you can share something
yeah,
on
I'll
that, that
check if
would
we
be
have a
great.
digital English version available. Yeah.
Oh, wow. But why I think this is interesting, uh, these the first one zooming in is like what we hear often. This is what we do as planners and designers. We zoom in and we zoom out and we see what is already there. The second one is already much more common practice, I would say. Not everywhere, but it's. We will also talk about that in the next 2 weeks. But this creating collective values, this is what I see that is difficult very often in Ukraine, which I think is very important in projects. Collective values is not agreeing on the project. Collective values is not voting for the best and democracy. It's really before that. It's trying to find a common language, common ideas, not about projects, not about end results, but why and what you want to achieve. And I think that is extremely difficult between municipality or advisors like we are and residents, but it's even more relevant between, for example, groups like refugees or IDPs and the people who lived already for years in the specific city, or maybe in the future for people who return from other countries to Ukraine, and that they also have their value set and their new knowledge, and they also need to be connected. By creating collective values, I see that gives some kind of space for understanding each other, for talking to each other without this end result, without voting, without deciding yet, but to look for what is your common goal and your values. I really, really emphasize on that. Not only in projects in the Netherlands it's helpful, but I think even more in Ukraine and now and in the future. And then that last one, the word flexibility, I used it again today, I think 5 times. I was just in a meeting with the World Bank representatives from Ukraine, uh, Bob Saum. The systems of legislation, the systems of permits, the systems of World Banks, investments, donors, they are slow. They are big. They are, I don't know, another word for slow. They are just, but in Ukraine, the question is fast, changing constantly. It's really today we have this big emerging topic. In 3 months we have another. 2 months later we have another. The amount of research topics that we need to grasp and understand, feel, find solutions, and then implement, it's huge. That's also the nice part of it. We need to be fast, but when we can do it, then we have a lot of results, then we have a lot of impact, and then we can make the difference here. That organizing flexibility within these big structures, that is for me also one of the most difficult challenges. So how to make sure that we stay flexible, agile, fast, smart, within the agreements that we made with those donors, with those residents, with those mayors, but still be able to adjust because something new happened, something urgent came, something relevant was changed, new data emerged. So I would say those 4 topics are very much fit to what I feel Ukraine is needing. And well, Tess will explain it a little bit towards the more stable context, but think in your head about the Ukrainian examples as well.
Thanks. Sorry that I went flipping, but I was
No, you're
reading the
right. Yeah,
chats and then my
you need
pages
to
were
go on.
changing. Yeah, so I have 2 examples about this search of lightness. I think the easy examples are often public space examples. So this is in Barcelona, where they have been thinking about public space and taking out the car and just testing by putting furniture there, putting trees there, see what happens if you do that, if it works, if it doesn't work. So if you do it in this easy way, it is easy to change also and to react quickly, but also to discover if the choices that you make are relevant, are working. And in Amsterdam, we had this the change of the speed in the streets, so from 50 kilometers per hour to 30 kilometers per hour, and that was done even more simple with just painting the numbers on the street. And the nice thing about it is that it's both reducing speed because of the graphics of the numbers, and it's even sort of ornamenting the streets, I think. So I like this double function of it, and it's very easy to change again. So if things are changing, if you want to change the street more radically, it is not a high cost that you have been spending on this reducing speed logic. Then there are two examples that I would like to share to see if yeah, to explain a bit more about this other way of thinking and lightness. One is in Amsterdam, which is the Bijbuurt. You could say it's an urban fringe. So this is the city center of Amsterdam, and this island, which is
What do you
under
mean by fringe?
development at the moment. Sorry.
What do you mean by fringe?
Yeah, it was for a long time. It was on the edge of the city, so there was not that much development going on. At the moment, it is quite heavily developing. So this area has been already built. There is a large area under construction at the moment where they're also going to build large towers. And this area here, at the moment, it looks like this more or less, and it's an area where students have been living, where there is small workspaces, where there are cultural spots, people who live there who have a more fluid life, you could say. These are people who are working also on fairs, for example. So the area got inhabited by quite different groups who share this space, who also take care of the landscape. But now the municipality wants to redevelop this space, and the main problem is that the soil is not very stable. So they say the first thing we need to do is to add a big pack of sand on top, and then everything which is there is destroyed, you could say, because you have to first put on the sand and then wait to see what's happened. So the group here came up with an alternative plan to see, can we work more from what is already there, from the network of people that are there, but also the ecology that is already there. So looking closely to the pattern that yeah, more or less haphazardly came about here. You see that there are some clusters, and the interesting thing is that these clusters are also all related to the edge of the area. And here you see the height of the ground. So there is a dike which is a stable dike, which is a good address, and there is the lower part which is less stable. So the principle that the group of people who united came up with, they said, can we work in clusters? And if we have to put sand on top, we have to wait 7 years till all the soil has become stable. And if we are doing it in clusters, we could start tomorrow with one cluster, maybe build differently on poles, not only on sand. So create a different system of building, which is much faster than the putting sand on top and then building a larger plan. So it serves two ways. On the one hand side, you can keep qualities that are already there, like the green structures which are in between, which can stay lower. You can develop faster with these smaller clusters. And you can also adapt, so you can discover, if we work with this one cluster, what kind of building strategy works with this difficult soil, and we can adapt and change in the next cluster. So this flexibility, I think, is also key to this strategy. But for the
I, l-
municipality, that's quite difficult because it means also it's less secure. It's more experimental. It's not the way we do it normally. So the municipality is very reluctant in going with this way of working. But I think it's interesting because it's been developed by the groups that are here together, and it's also finding a way to also to make speed and to yeah, try to experiment and to see how that could work.
and why I think that it's interesting that you show this. Okay, in the Netherlands, we have a lot of water. People know that usually. We have so much water that the land is also usually contaminated with a lot of water. That is the issue here. How high is it? How dry is it? But in Ukraine, we might not have the same problem technically, but there is maybe areas that are a lot polluted. So brownfield areas with former industries that you have to invest a lot in adding or changing new ground or soil to be able to reuse that areas. sometimes areas in the middle of town, in the middle of big cities or middle of villages. So the approach maybe is, and also we have that same problem in the Netherlands, by the way, but that approach of thinking in fragments, in islands, in smaller pieces, so you can speed up by slowing your speed, that is quite interesting. And actually, in Ukraine, there are not so many municipalities where there is so much external pressure and requests from demands from for new developments, new houses, new interventions, new buildings, as there are in Amsterdam. So the city of Amsterdam is maybe a little bit reluctant, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't fit for the city of maybe Vinica or Rivne, which is much lower pressure. It's a shrinking country, still is, and there is not so much pressure. And then very often those renovation or transformation areas are too complicated, unless you look at an example like this and you build it up in different speeds and different pieces, and you learn from one island to the next island to the next development. So that's why I like this in the Ukrainian context as well. Maybe different background, but the approach can be reused.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so this is about the collective. Maybe it's too much of a detail, so we finished this now more or less. And the second and last example I want to show is in another part of the Netherlands. It's in the northeast of the Netherlands, and it's much more shrinking area. So maybe that what you just spoke about, that it's not always developing it with a lot of pressure, but this is really a low pressure area, you could say. But it's a valuable one for this particular city because it's in the middle of the city. This is the old city center of Emmen. What they did is they wanted to build a new zoo. They did that over here. That's what this strange element that you see over here. And they also spent a lot of subsidies on bridging connecting the zoos to the center. So they made a tunnel here. They made a new square here. So a lot of things happening. But what to do with the old zoo? So the old zoo is also really, and it's the heart of the village. This is the market square. This is the old street. This is a large shopping center. But it's also a huge identity for Emmen. The fact that the zoo was there, and the new zoo, of course, is still there. But it was a place that everybody of the city went to. But it's also everybody in the Netherlands knew about this zoo because it was innovative in the way it helped the animals. It gave a lot of free space to animals. So it was really something that a lot of people visited, and that really gave identity to Emmen. So I think that's quite important to know that it's not just a leftover space, but it's really a space where people remember going there with their grandchildren and going there. So it's really an emotional element, you could say. And also for the Netherlands, quite special that you have a large zoo, really, and you could see the church tower close to it. So it's in the heart of the city. And so they had all these big developments with the new zoo, which was also for the city quite a large investment. And then they didn't know what to do with the old zoo, and they said, okay, what the best thing we can do is simply open it up to the public and ask for initiatives to see what can be done here. So when you look at the plan of the zoo as it was still in function, it has a sort of the main area in the middle, which is an island which is surrounded by water, so it can be kept as a landscape, you could say. And then around the edges there were existing buildings, and they say to the city of Emmen, like, okay, we have these buildings, come up with initiatives. What can we do with these buildings? How can we reuse them? And they are not in super shape, and they are smell of animals, and so they have some negative points, but they are for free. So let's see how can we reinvent this zoo. And what I found really interesting is that this worked. That there were a lot of small initiatives, and Sorry, it's again in Dutch. So there is a lot of art initiatives, so a little theater, a museum, workspaces for people. The local art center is there.
Do you know how long it
Um,
took before those initiatives came? Was that like right away, or did it take many years?
No, it was relatively slow. So the small ones, for example, the restaurant which is close to the market, it was easy to go. So that was the first one that was relatively easy. There were some smaller scale initiatives like the museum, which are low key, which was one of the first. But the more complex one, like the movie center, was quite a bit later. So it took quite some time. So it's not that it was completely filled at the beginning. It really is at a slow pace. Um, and for a city like this, also a park is not a natural thing because it's a low density city. Everybody has a back garden, so the use of a park is not a natural element in a small scale city like this. So the I think the combination of these type of functions, the fact that there was also because of it being a shrinking city, the musical school where children learn to play a musical instrument was already gone because there was no subsidy for it anymore. But now they could start it on a very low, easy way to work, and so it could come back again. So it was also a way to reintroduce functions which got lost and are now again, yeah, also by the energy of people are reintroduced and are yeah, functioning in a sort of yeah amateuristic way, you could say, which doesn't sound that nice maybe, but I think that's the strength of it. It's that it's people doing it themselves and yeah, by the opportunity of space, a lot of cultural um, energy came about. And so, which goes from a philosophy cafe to escape room, which is more commercial, to the museum, to the movie center. So quite different initiatives, really, also for different type of people who are looking for different needs in the city. So this is my last slide, trying to sum up a bit, like, okay, what elements do we have to work with when transformation in the city is not just about bricks and mortar, but very much about people. So I think this thinking about time, thinking about how things align in time, and are there sort of windows of opportunity that things are coming together is an interesting element. The building of networks, creating things together, looking for what collective values are there that you can build on, even though you have all different take-ons, and working similarly on more system-oriented elements and more functional elements and how they could, yeah, reinforce each other and yeah, working, how much can you do in parallel? That's maybe for the last one. So that's where my story ends.
Thanks a lot, Tess. I already saw some hearts and thumbs up during the lecture. There's more coming now, so that is that is nice. Please share some questions in the chat or maybe on screen. I will ask you one directly that was mentioned in the chat. If you have suggestions about books about sociology that you feel, urban sociology, that you feel beyond Jane Jacobs, Gill, Sennett, yeah, please share some of them. We will share them with the whole group.
Yeah,
Just names, articles that you think these are always for me like a reference, or maybe you have already one or two names right now that you think,
not right now,
please.
but I can also ask my colleagues at the TU who are more into this sociology part. So I think I
Yeah,
will
that
ask
would be
them.
that would be
Yeah.
would be great. Then Borislav.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for the lecture. Yeah, in the initial stages of the lecture, you showed us some table with plan of implementing strategies for some particular neighborhood. Are there any differences in the usage of particular land? For example, administrative or more dense situation or lower dense, and others, for example, in stages, in some peculiar additional maybe stages of that plants.
And
Did you
which
understand?
slide do you refer to? I don't understand. So
One of the
let's
first slides.
can you go
Can
back, Tess?
I can see.
That maybe helps. Then we can see where the question came from.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Please back slightly.
this is the start. So maybe
Yeah,
we go
move
from
on,
there.
move there, move. Another one. Further. I saw it.
Back.
Kinda, and the next one more. I guess you skipped it. It was nearby the one of the previous, yeah, and you had some general scheme of or diagram of the stages of repairing maybe or preparing for some rebuild.
I think it's the one with the different eras of building. So
Yeah.
The
next
shorter
one,
version of this. Yeah.
yeah, this one.
That's
Yeah,
this
here.
one.
Okay.
So are
This
there
is
any additional points, for example, talking about Ukraine, for example, because for Netherlands, I guess it's more about stable and equal building housing, I don't know. And for Ukraine, it's something not so highly organized um, land
Yeah, but I
use.
think there are also in Ukrainian context, you have, of course, different periods. I mean, the Russian period gave completely different areas to the city than the areas from the 1900s or something. So they all have their own spatial logic, you could say. But they also have their own time frame, so the way they change over time is different, of course, and also how sustainable are they or how resilient to change, I think is quite different. So, and it also is what makes a city interesting, that you have this diversity. So if it is all in one period and all made in the same way, it's also more difficult to change. I think it's almost like in biology that diversity allows for different things to grow. And if you have one type of crop and the crop has a bad year, then you are lost, you could say. So the having this stacking of layers and diversity in time and all the new together, I think really is an asset for a city. In the meantime, Fulco is
if
drawing
I
all
can
kind of.
add, yeah, if I can add, so I think in Ukraine we also have this market-driven period in, let's say, the 90s, and maybe even until COVID, there was a lot of that happening. And you could see that there was a transformation from market-driven to some kind of people-driven or quality-driven. I could imagine there was more and more attention to that. And now, of course, if we would make a Ukrainian a diagram of this, there is a huge disruption in this diagram. And then we have to look back at this area, rebuilding rebuilding after the Second World War. what kind of style was that? That was mainly about quantity. That was mainly about numbers. That was mainly about high rise with also some futuristic perspectives. The car was really introduced. So that was also based on values. But the question is, how are we going to do that for Ukraine like this? So I think, Borislav, it's up to us. That's what I said before. It's up to us to define that next column, and that is so. It's not an easy answer, but that's the challenges of this course, of course.
Okay, thank you.
Let's Lena, maybe you, and then in the meantime, Tess can also maybe read a little bit of the chats because there are a few nice ones that you might be able to answer. But Lena, you do the verbal one now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the lecture, Tess. I think I have misunderstood some of your examples and I need some clarifications. So this question is about your example of Amsterdam and their plan to redevelop the island. To me, it sounded strange. It sounded like the residents were all happy to lose their homes in this big idea of redevelopment, and they even offered cooperation, but in different manner. So, because if it were in Ukraine like that, I think people would protest against such a redevelopment. So maybe I misunderstood the example, and there was something more to it.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. No, so it fits, because the circle is perfectly in the right spot. It was similar to what you say. So the municipality came up with a plan to redevelop the area, and then the people started protesting. So the people who live there started protesting. But they did it in a sort of positive way because they also knew that they were there on a temporary basis. So they didn't have any official rights to stay there, but they have experienced the quality of the space, so they know what makes this space special. So they have much more knowledge, you could say, about the space, and they wanted to use that knowledge not for their private good, but for the greater good. That they say, okay, this is something where this neighborhood can really profit from. So maybe it started as a sort of we are against it because it's we lose the space we have, but they turned that into a more positive way of thinking, like, okay, but we can make the better plan, even if it's not for us anymore. It is better for the city if it can be done like this. Okay.
Yes, Lena, that's nice in the comments. We need to learn to protest positively.
Yeah.
Maybe Solomia?
Hi, Tess. Hi, everyone. Thank you. You have sorry, just a minute. Yes. So I'm so excited of your lecture, and actually I want to ask you two questions. One of them, when we talk about building some spaces for internal displaced people in the city, how do you think how we should do start, or what approach, what some things we should include before we will do it? And the second one question, it's more global and very common in Ukrainian. It's a level city. When we talk about city which were destroyed, and in the future we will need to rebuild them or something like that, it's dilemma. Some said that we should build absolutely new city. Some said that is no, we should combine approach. And how do you think in this case which approach we need to use? Thank you.
Let's start with the first, and maybe you need to help me again with the second because it's a lot at one time. So I think Yeah, where to start? I think that it's a very good question because often you start with making plans already, but I think maybe the first is to talk to each other. What is actually needed here? What is someone in the comments also spoke about the program of needs. So what are the yeah to really talk about what do we expect from this development? What should it do? What so in a
The
functional
values maybe
sense,
again.
sorry?
The values maybe again, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but also and maybe the values made practical. So okay, what would that mean? What would you need? How large is a house? What common facilities do you need? Do you have a job? Where is the job? How is it easy to get to? Could we create jobs in the neighborhood? I mean, so all this kind of practical things, which really about everyday life. Like where do I do my shopping? Do I have a possibility to grow my own vegetables and whatever? And so I think if you start with that conversation, like what should an area do,
And who
then it's
starts that conversation and then connecting it to Hilda's question about yeah, which needs come first?
Mhm.
Who organizes this conversation normally in your practice? Is that the
That
municipality
also
or is that?
yeah, it depends also who owns the ground, I think.
Mhm.
So if the ground is owned by the municipality, that would be the most logical party. But sometimes also a developer starts this conversation, knowing that a new development should be part of a larger community and that it's not a single element, and then finding out together what is necessary at this specific place, and then yeah, I think
And yeah,
there are a lot of ways of doing this kind of participation and to start the conversation.
But what about if they, for example, for first time they don't need, or maybe they even don't think so globally. They need just first things that it necessary, some food, some shampoo, and so on, some house, yeah. But they in that stage they even don't want to think wider. But all we understand that time is going, and we should to think about more wider than its rapid solution for housing and so on. How in this case, or when we don't have a possibility to ask them directly, what do you need? When we work in perspective, try to find some solution to include this part of the new residents of the city and build something great which combine not only internal displaced people and also local people. You know, it's like bridge space where they will communicate all together, and how we can organize something like that.
Oh, it's a lot of questions, and it's hard to think what would be a wise answer, I think. But oh,
can I combine it again with the question
mhm.
about trust? So I think Solomia and Gilda, you clearly show that you understand those things cost time, and this trust is being needing it needs to yeah, it needs to be built, that needs to be developed, and we know in Ukraine that there's very often not so much time, or people assume that there's not so much time. They just want to build as fast as possible, or they just want to make decisions as fast as possible. I also know that the Ukrainian word for solving something is the same as the word for making a decision. I don't know the word anymore, but it's the same word. And that is interesting, that sometimes you have to just not make a decision yet. You have to talk, you have to think longer, you have to. So, how do you do that? if and what I like about this example of this picture that is still on the screen is that then positive activism, protesting, they started talking about it. They were not against it. So then, if not the developer understands that or wants that yet, then the community started doing that, or maybe a local architect started doing it. Or in my case, because this is not only in Ukraine, it's also in the Netherlands and Poland. In my case, I very often come to a municipality or to a developer and say, yeah, okay, I can draw something, but let me first do some research to make sure I do the right drawing. And that research is usually talking. So also us as designers, us as creators of the future picture, we can take our role in just organizing that information from the people, managing that by that way. And then, of course, building trust is crucial. I think Gilda's totally right. So you have to create time there to build that trust and to be very precise in the process in what steps to take and what you can promise and what not. And that is, of course, different in each project. Very small project, very large project, it's very different. But usually you have to find some time. And sometimes the time is there before the project starts. Sometimes the time you have to create time during the project. And sometimes the reality will help you because very often they want to make fast decisions, but making fast decision doesn't always work legislative, or maybe there are some protests that are stopping it. And then you have time, maybe negatively, but at least you can use that time that you win there, or the economy drops, or the risks from investors drop. So there's always reasons why you might have more time, and then you can use that time to build trust on content, trust on visions, values, and goals. And that's, I think, what also in the Netherlands needs to be done. I think we need to have like 500,000 new houses in a couple of years. Nobody's going to be able to make that in time. And if you do that not properly, then it will be 500,000 ugly, terrible houses. And people like Tess are trying to create a process around that you can do it with each other, and then you can also make decisions properly as well. So that would be my answer to help Tess a little bit, but maybe it inspires you to give another example. Give another example, Tess.
Yeah, I think it's very much about short term and long term. So you want to do the right thing for the long term and to build something which is solid and resilient and which can change in different ways. So you need to be a bit patient on the short term to discover what this long term goal or need could be, and that is difficult because developers are in a hurry, or the municipality is in a hurry. And in the Netherlands, the processes are always, it never goes the way you expect it. So there's always an opportunity, and there's always a gap in time where you can, rediscover what is actually needed.
I think maybe one more question that was asked also by Solomia, but it's also difficult for you, and maybe we can combine it with Rishinchak's question about, let's say, extreme architecture or star architecture, high quality versus the past. But also, maybe you have an opinion, or maybe you have another example, Tess, that you feel from Amsterdam, from other periods of time, where rebuilding neighborhoods or buildings that have been shut down or closed down or been bombed in Rotterdam in the Second World War. Do you have like a professional opinion on that, how Ukraine should look at that, or is it too far away from your daily knowledge, which is fine as well. Then we will discuss it with the group. Tess is gone. Frozen like that. So then let me try to answer the question, the combined question that I tried to make. In Amsterdam, there's still, of course, in Amsterdam, we have people like everywhere. People who are more progressive, people who want to change the world with something very expensive, people who are not caring about other people who already live there. People are against everything. People are protesting. It's just a normal group of people. That also means that in a city like that, where there's a lot of pressure in investments and in new possibilities, new large icons are being built. At this moment, mainly in the field of housing, actually, is very, so the example of the Louvre, maybe not, but there's a lot of quite expensive housing projects near the water that have been built in the last 5 years. I will look up some of the examples easily. And that is, yeah, some people like it, some people don't, but it changes the picture of Amsterdam. It changes also the picture of architecture in the Netherlands. Does everybody like it? Were there protests? No, not everybody likes it. Yes, there were protests, but sometimes it still fits the legislation. It is approved, and then the developers can continue. Usually that is on ground that nobody lives, and that where there's no where the zoning plan or the master plan are already agreed on similar functions. It's mainly the form that is different. And talking about the topic of how to translate that to Ukraine, take your time. I think that's what I learned from Tess's lecture. Try to take your time. Try to find the energy where we can find combined values. Try not to solve it right away. I've seen mayors mainly, but also sometimes architects to solve the problem with the first thing that they could think of. And that is sometimes good enough. But for those high standard changes, or for those very delicate questions like rebuilding a place that has been bombed, or for example, memorialization, the first thing is not always the best, very often not. And please take your time, because you're like everybody needs to sketch, needs to rethink, needs to have different scenarios, analyze it. And that is also what all of us should do when we are thinking about urban design. The first idea might be the best, but what if not? Did you have a second idea or a third idea or a fourth design even? And did you then compare and analyze? I think that is part of the job. It's part of the job that you go beyond yourself, that you test yourself really to the limit. If your idea ticks all those boxes. We explained in module 1 and module 2 how many different approaches there are, how many different interests there are, how many different layers in urban planning there are, how many different people there are, how many different time pulses there are. So the first idea is never fully right. It cannot be. You have to try to think one step further, and then I guess again try to win some time. I hope it could work, and then we can. Of course, we should answer the question. We should not only wait. Building trust is also showing something, but not too fast is usually my advice. Tess, I kind of finished the questions a little bit.
Very good.
You were suddenly gone. I don't know. You disappeared.
Also, the internet in Amsterdam is not that stable, so it's sometimes it's falling out. So I just connected to my phone, and so.
Okay.
But I'm happy
Okay.
that you answered the question and that you rounded up nicely. So I can also finish.
Yeah.
That is
None.
perfectly
Maybe a last
fine.
word from your side, whatever came into your mind while checking the techniques, technologies, and then
No,
Was it okay for you to do this, even not knowing Ukraine? Was it inspiring for you?
yeah, it was really nice, and I also the way you interpreted my schemes, I think it's also interesting for me to think about, and also the questions are quite inspiring. So yeah, thank you for having me. I think it's a really nice first meeting with everyday life in Ukraine. So that's fantastic.
It's the best kind of lessons where the teacher learns. That's amazing, Tess. Nice final words. Lilette, I think back to you.
Yeah, thank you. That's the way how Fulco does it, Tess. So gradually grab you in, and then you would not let go of Ukraine anymore. So we hope to see you
Don't tell, don't tell.
in this context and later. Thank you so much for being here. Also, again, Olena, I think you helped Olena very much by speaking clear and not extremely fast. So she was also giving some space. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here, and yeah, hope to see you again.
What are we going to do? A little break?
Yes, we are going to have a break and get back at 10 past 8 Ukrainian time. In the meantime, a couple of things. You had the inquiry. We were already answering on that one, or Lisa answered on that one. Some more clarity we hope to give on the final expectations for this course. There will be still unclarities in there, but it's easier to discuss that in the smaller groups, because it's really different also for the 3 smaller groups, because they have been working differently until now. So it's nice if this clarification comes from your mentors. There was also a request for more information on Nizin. Volker already explained it will come next week. And what already happened today, there was some request for real examples. So come with actual examples of case studies, and that's what Tess gave to us. So thank you for that as well, to make it more concrete. That worked very well. So thanks again, and see you all back in the rooms at 10 past.